And welcome back here to Brandon's World on this Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. And baseball season is right around the corner, so to preview it, we had to bring on our MLB aficionado, the one and only voted line member, former colleague of mine at Buckshore Radio, Sean Fitzgerald.
Hello, my king, General Manager Brandon Lewis.
Hello, Fitz. And Fitz, I bring you on every year to preview basically the MLB season, but we have so much to get into today. From baseball to March Madness to the NBA to the NFL. This has been, we always say March is one of the craziest times in sports. Is this one of the busiest Marches we've ever had?
Uh, Beyond just the sporting calendar and just what I've been doing this month, yes.
Well,
I've,
Fitz,
yeah.
it's funny. I wanted to tell you this on the air that Brandon's World is now all of a sudden a baseball show. Um,
Oh,
we have talked more baseball on this show, especially in March, than I ever have. And the viewership for the podcast in terms of baseball has been way up. People are loving it, and I
maybe I
think
should just go exclusively baseball in mine
I think
because I
part of
really
it
am thinking
is.
about dropping the clowns.
We'll get into the NFL way late in the show. That's the other thing. The NFL is the last on our rundown. Usually it's the first thing we talk about because the
Hmm.
draft and everything is on everybody's mind. But March was dominated by the World Baseball Classic. And I actually think I watched more of it than you did, which is a shocker.
Well,
'Cause
part of it was because of my schedule. Like, I wake up very early in the
you
morning.
do, but I mean, I was all in on this tournament and not just the US. I was watching almost every game when I got the
Yeah.
chance to. Um,
Like I'd be looking at the box scores, I'd be like trying to catch up, like listening like for a few quick minutes here or there where I could. It was definitely a very exciting tournament. I did not expect Japan to go down as easily as they did. Italy definitely was a surprise of the tournament, and I say that not because of Italy, baseball and people probably wouldn't put two and two together, but their lineup, oh my goodness, it was something else. I love, especially some of the young players and their Marlins. I think he still would be considered a rookie. I might be wrong, but they've got the Miami Marlins have an exciting core of players again on the hitting side. Jacob Marcy, he was someone who just nuked the Guardians last year. I think it was like the Wednesday game of August series, mid August. The kid's like almost 5 tool, close to it. Like, oh my God. And then Vinny Pascantino. And then I didn't even realize Aaron Nola was their starting
yeah.
pitcher. Venezuela, you had some of the biggest stars like, Ronald Acuna Jr., USA, obviously, Bryce Harper, Aaron Judge, Dominican Republic, Vladdy Jr. I mean, and then,
Do you know in the real quick in that Dominican US game, to your point, there were 19 players in that
yep,
game that received at least one MVP vote.
yep, and at least 5 MVPs, if I'm not mistaken, including Acuna and Judge.
I mean, that was theater. I mean, I never imagined myself. And here's the thing, I think Fox did a tremendous job this year with the marketing around it. It felt like a big deal. It felt like the
It
first
did.
time that, again, maybe it's because we were coming off the U.S. men's and women's hockey winning gold in the Olympics, and it
I
just
think it's more
carried
so the
over.
Otani and Trout factor. You had the ultimate penultimate matchup 3 years ago as the
Yeah.
very final at bat. It took a couple of pitches, and Otani ultimately got the strikeout against his in the last year that he had Trout as a teammate, as a member of the Angels, and then you had Otani drawing the eyeballs in as well, but also all these other guys. Like this is the tournament's still relatively new. It's only
Yeah,
been
this is only
around
like the fifth tournament, right?
fifth, sixth, seventh. It's been around only since
I
like
think
the
I think
early
this
mid
was the
2000s,
sixth because they
2006.
did '06, they did
Yeah.
'09,
Mm-hmm.
13, 17, and then it took a break till 2023 because COVID canceled the one in
Mm-hmm.
2021. And
Yeah.
now reportedly it's coming back in 2029 or 2030.
Yeah. 29 it should be. It's coming
And
back in 29.
and there is talk about, do we move this around? Do we do what the NHL did and sort of do a mini Olympics, if you will, and put it in the middle of the
I'm
season?
glad you brought up the Olympics.
Yeah, because that's what I was
Because
going
I
to talk
know
about.
that
I am
we're going to
so
talk about the
excited.
one thing that we're going to do.
2028
I don't
baseball
think you're getting baseball in the Olympics, at least
that they
not with
already
Major League.
announced it. It's going to be in the
Not with
Summer
Major League.
Olympics. You don't think
Here's a
so?
little update to this. Bruce Meyer, who replaced Tony Clark as one of those, union heads. We're not going to get into the whole brouhaha that happened, but Tony Clark, just a lot of crap went down. If, and I know I'm jumping the gun, Brandon, we got to talk about this first. If there's a lockout, Bruce Meyer has said that it's unlikely that Major League Baseball players, though anyone on those 26 or 40 mans, would be in the 2028
Oh, that's
Olympics.
a bummer because I was looking more forward to the baseball
Well,
one than
again,
the
it's
basketball
only
one.
if they have a full year lockout, not if it's just a couple of games, right?
Just the thought of that though is
I
just
know. And that's where a lot of things are going to revolve. There's a lot of what ifs, but I know there is someone who is, whether they were Derek Jeter, talking about, how this isn't as big as the World Series. Well, you would have only known because you really only played on the World Series, number one. And number two, just to be real here, I was kind of peeved when I kind of heard the comment that wasn't a verbatim quote. But as someone pointed out, I believe it was Justin Lotta. He's someone who's big on Guardians prospects, other prospects on Twitter/X. Uh, this is the World Baseball Classic, the basically the World Series of the World Series,
yeah.
not just the America plus Toronto. This is the World Series, and you had markets like Venezuela, big on baseball, Japan, Dominican, Italy was getting their proper due. Everyone else, even Australia, with guys like Fairchild, with like Bazana, like that was incredible. And you've seen more buy-in every year now from USA, and I I really think, Logan Webb, like he pitched his heart out. He's a member of the San Francisco Giants. He's
Yep.
kind of like your current modern day Corey Kluber in terms of just a solid workhorse, like who's like always going to be like top 10 Cy Young, in my opinion. Uh, may not win a Cy Young, but he's always going to be in that conversation. Like they really did a great job with the advertising, as you said. And this is a right step in the right direction for baseball, especially given what could be, potential 2027, however it plays out. I'm one of the people who's the least optimistic, but I'm hoping I'm wrong, man. But hey, if they do get the Olympics, the thing is, I don't know if baseball's willing to do it unless they condense the timetable, and I don't think they would. I
So
think at
real
the end of the day, it'll
quick,
be a hard thing to do.
before we get into viewership, because I want to talk about how massive this thing was. I don't know if you saw the
I
numbers
saw
that
it
came
past the
out.
NBA finals at least.
Insane. I just want to point this out. So USA obviously loses to Venezuela in the finals. The semifinals was a great matchup
Yeah.
between US and Dominican, but a lot of these were 2-1, 3-2 low type scoring games. My point is this: for everybody that goes on here and talks about baseball and baseball's unfair, and I agree with you, it needs a salary cap. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
But
and the
everybody
floor. There needs to be a whole different thing
but
gone by
everybody
here.
that says payroll, 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 the more payroll you have, the more winning it means. The U.S. and Dominican may have had the two most loaded lineups that you could put together between the two teams, and
Yeah.
they combined scored 3 runs, which tells you it
You
doesn't
have
matter
Paul
how
Skeens
great your
going.
lineup is. If you have great pitching, it will always beat great hitting.
Yep. And when you have Paul Skeens, and I was surprised at Luis Severino's outing. He did a pretty good dang job, man. I mean, he's not someone who I would typically take as like, oh, I'd want to hand him the ball, but he pitched a pretty good game.
And Fitz, you mentioned that, the final of the WBC, not only did it beat every single NBA final game this year besides game seven, but I don't know if you know this, it also beat every single game of the 2023 World Series between the Rangers and the Diamondbacks.
Wow, I'm surprised on that. Just I can understand from the Diamondbacks factor, but the Rangers, wow, that's a little surprising. Not
The
terribly.
the high point of that World Series was game five was on 9.8. This one got about 10.2 million. And again, the cable numbers, because I follow this all the time, because it's actually a big topic, believe it or not, in the professional wrestling industry is TV ratings. So there's a lot of back and forth of what the ratings actually mean. Do they include streaming? Do they
Plus, I
not?
know they've been I like the NFL this fall. Like there was like a whole thing with like Nielsen and them wanting to
Yeah,
like
well, Nielsen, what they did is they changed their model. and it actually improved everything. It inflated NFL ratings basically. And now they've gone back and said, well, that number isn't right. Now they went back to the old model that they were using.
Mhm.
But yeah, again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But let's now move to the current season because we are at the time this will air, we are 48 hours away from the kickstart of the 2026 MLB season. And as you have stated earlier today, Fitz, you better enjoy it.
Oh,
Because
don't even fucking start with that one. I know where you're going with that, but it's like,
hopefully I see for those of you that are just listening on audio, Fitz is wearing a Jose Ramirez
here's the
jersey.
thing is that I bought this for myself about a month or two ago. My parents had gotten me the other Christmas, just one with no name on the back. But like once, especially after Jose inked that second extension, and they didn't even have to pay him. Let's just say that first and foremost, they never had to pay Ramirez that type of deal, but they are locking in a legacy player, and obviously the City Connects are pretty dang cool. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to get myself one of these.
So I think the AL Central this year is going to be really competitive between the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Royals. I don't know about
Twins
Minnesota.
are not gonna. Nope, 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 and nope. They sold off too many pieces. They are not, and they're
That's what
too
I
young.
figured.
It's
Now,
not happening. The White Sox, though,
I was
I'm
going to
not saying they're
ask,
going to
how
be
bad are they going
500.
to be?
They're going to be decent. They're going to actually be decent.
By decent, do we mean like
I'm
70
saying they can
wins?
be. I think they could honestly up. I think there is a small chance that they could end up third in the division over Kansas City.
Wow.
They've got Kyle Teal being out, one of the main pieces from the deal that sent Garrett Crochet the other year to Boston. He's their starting catcher. Like that's a little bit of a blow for the first 4 to 6 weeks, give or take. But they've got the dudes. Like it's not going to be easy to do that. They're likely going to finish fourth. I've got the Twins pegged last. I think it'll be close in the bottom half of the standings, but again, it's a smaller chance. But I do see a world where the White Sox are able to finish third. It depends on just the pitching health for Kansas City. I think their bats are going to be all right, but Seth Lugo is a year older, and he's a little bit on the older side, obviously, but he's still quality pitcher. Um, Michael Waka did pretty well last year, but again, some questions. I think the bullpen for Kansas City is okay, but they flipped a bunch of pieces ahead of the 24 playoffs where they, were able to qualify. And when they did, it feels like they kind of set themselves back. And I'm not sold on Jack Caglione for this year. He still needs a little bit of seasoning, in my opinion, but maybe he takes that step forward after a solid offseason.
So for the Guardians, listen, we know outside of obviously signing Reese Hopkins right before spring training, they obviously didn't make a lot of moves because they got to figure out.
Reese Hoskins, though, dude, I never could have imagined the Guardians would get him on a 1.5 million minor league deal if you made the big league roster,
uh,
and you get the righty hitter with pop. Look, batting average, throw that out the window. I want everyone to listen. Throw batting average out the window. Okay. If he's hitting 25, 30 home runs, 20 home runs, it's worth it. It's worth it. Ball go far, team go far.
My
And he is one of
point
those players I've
was,
always had an irrational love for. But go ahead.
my point is, and I'm not saying this roster is better than the 2016 or 2017
Oh, it's
roster,
not.
but I think is this the best opening day lineup they've had in a long time?
Hard to say, honestly. I don't know where I'd rank it. I really don't. I would need to like look back at all the
Here's the
past.
thing. If Bo Naylor can hit the way he hit in the World Baseball
Yeah,
Classic, which
that's
has me
not just that, but
excited,
at the end of the year too, the
there,
mechanical adjustments he made with his head.
yep.
One of the main things that, for viewers who don't know, my backstory when I was going through high school trying to make the team, like one of the things that I was able to do going through so much intensive, like, practice with a private hitting instructor, shout out to Coach Dan Smigo. Uh, one of the bad habits I had was, head movement, like too early. If you're like moving your head, like if you're lifting it up, like you're not going to hit the baseball. You want to have your nose essentially looking down at the plate. And then when you finish both hands through, you'll naturally look up, your back foot will turn, whether you're in right handed box or left handed box. Naylor's head movement being minimized and just the mechanical adjustments he made, if that's a permanent fixture, I'm not saying he's your long term franchise catcher, right? They really love Cooper Engel, who they drafted in 2024, or Jacob Kozart, rather. But they love both those two catchers in the minors. but Bo Naylor could end up being a very valuable piece of this team for the next, however many years of control you have of it.
That's been the one spot where this team, they have to get more offensive production out of that position
Don't forget,
specifically.
though, offensive production out of catcher isn't exactly common. It's still, we
It's
were spoiled
not,
by Yachty, we
but
were spoiled by
it is.
Posey, by
But you
Mauer
got to
before
hit at
him.
least 200, Fitz. I mean, he
He
didn't
was.
get,
He hit over 200 just
but
by a bit.
it was by the end of the year. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. In July, wasn't he hitting like 170?
I don't remember, to be honest.
I He got hot
But
at
it
the
wouldn't
end of the
surprise
year
me.
to get
Yeah.
over
But
200.
the thing is, that also coincided with the mechanical changes. He was making adjustments throughout the year, and he finally got down into a zone where he's like,
But again, his offensive production is part of the reason why the team got hot in September. If he does not hit, 210, 220, then you got to find another solution.
yeah.
You
And
can't
he was
go
able to
through
draw some
another half a
walks too,
year
which was impressive.
for sure. My point is you got Bonanza, obviously. You've got
Bazana,
Bazana, excuse me.
BAZ. I think was it double Z or double N?
You've
That's
got Valera, Benito, I think should be up at some point this
Yeah.
year.
Valera's going to open up on the IL with Hunter Gaddis more than likely. Gaddis for
Yeah.
sure, but Valera, and then Juan Brito. We'll see. He had a little bit of a shaky spring training in my mind.
I was an advocate. I think they should play Stephen Kwan in center field.
I mean, they are going to. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And honestly, I want people to just think of this. Kwan and his representation, and I am saying this as much as I can say without getting any sources in trouble, are asking for the moon and the stars. The Guardians in prior off seasons, I have no idea about this off season that we're just coming out of. But at least the two prior off seasons before that, they made fair value market offers. And I think if I'm Stephen Kwan, I would have wanted to switch representation because I think his reps are insane for what they were asking. And I'm not going to go further into details.
So my one worry for this team, and calm me down if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I know his metrics are good. I know he's viewed as one of the best relievers in baseball. I still don't trust Kate Smith in the closer's role. I think he
I
was a little
do
bit shaky
because
last year after the Clase incident. We'll see. Maybe a full year under his belt.
look, guys like Clase, guys like even a solid Cody Allen, Clase, and let me get into that story in a few minutes. I want you to allow me to finally bring light to this because I know last year around this time I was not willing to share on the record, but when you have guys like that as closers, it's you become spoiled. It's like to make a football analogy, Joe Thomas as the left tackle of the Cleveland Browns or Joel Bitonio as the left guard of the Cleveland Browns. You get spoiled, and
I would
I
actually
think,
make a different analogy real quick.
mm,
I think it's similar to kicker. Or like
yeah, like Phil
you
Dawson, like
yes,
Justin
where
Tucker,
you
all
need a
that.
great closer, you need a great kicker to close the game because all the NFL games seemingly come down to a kick. Go on.
Yeah, but Cade Smith is more than ready to take on the role. Will he be perfect? No. Will he be great? Yes. I think he's just the kind of guy you need, and he's a guy who's always been able to have a short-term memory. And my hope is that by around the home opener, we'll hear news of an extension for him. Because we're in that window right now, and I might even just start checking Twitter just to be certain. We're in that window right now where the Guardians don't usually get a lot of leaks out of their organization, which is a good thing. But they prefer to respect the players, respect the negotiation process. But outside of like one or two guys, like I'm really hoping that they get Smith this year because I know he was on their radar big time last year and they weren't able to lock him up quite yet.
Well, I know last year, when we did this preview and I talked about Detroit and I said, oh, they were scary, and you said, hold your horses. Well, now they got Verlander back along with Scooble.
Yeah, Verlander wasn't as good last year. Obviously, age has caught up, but he's still a very good pitcher. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's not just very good. He's a legacy. But I mean, overall, I mean, I think this is obviously his retirement tour, and I'm glad it's going to end up in Detroit.
What do you think about the Tigers this year?
Obviously, their pitching got better. The lineup, I'm not 100% certain of yet. I think it's going to be a similar race to last year. And again, I couldn't have predicted all the stuff that happened last year from the 10-game losing streak to the whole pitch rigging stuff. And I mean, end of last year, like I know I was probably the least optimistic I had ever been since the Manny Acta years. That was just between Eric Wedge and Tito Francona.
Yeah.
But I am glad to have been able to eat my words. I really am.
So, listen, we're going to dive into the entire Major League Baseball in July. We're going to bring you on again. Last year, for those of you that remember, we did State of the Sports in July. So I had on front of the show Jalen Sandvik. He did the NBA. Fitz came on. He did Major League Baseball. David Profusic came on. He did college football. Christian Hidden came on. He did the NFL. We're
You
gonna
should
do
have
the
hoops on with Alex Wilcox. You should do that at some point.
we're gonna do that again this year. So we're gonna dive into baseball a lot deeper at that point. But as I always do, this time of year, Fitz, we're 48 hours again away from the start of the MLB season. World Series prediction.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Give me a second to think because there's so much. I mean, you want to pick the Dodgers, right? That's typically what anyone with a sane train of thought
See,
would think.
my thought is if they go for a repeat, it will obviously be historic. I don't think that they're gonna make the World Series this year.
It's tough because they fortified the bullpen, and a bullpen in October like that one, man, it's tough. And I would say the Phillies would have been my favorite if not for Zach. Last year he had like I think was it thoracic TOS
Yeah.
related stuff. The National League's very bunched up. The fact that Milwaukee couldn't really do much of anything in the NLCS, I was kind of
Yeah.
disheartened by that. I mean, it's going to be either Los Angeles or I don't even want to say necessarily
Here's the thing:
Memphis if
the
there's
in
San
the
Diego.
World Series, Toronto had them, and I'm worried about Toronto this year because I'm worried about their emotional standpoint. Can you
Oh, I don't think it's
recover?
emotional. I think it's just they'll recover. Even if they look, the AL East is always a tough one.
Yes.
I think the Red Sox probably are going to come out of there as the division winners. Yankees
See,
probably
I've
walk.
heard a lot of things on Boston. What did they do in the offseason?
Well, even though they let go of Bregman, they signed one of Philly's better pitchers, Ranger Suarez, to a long-term deal. He's a left-hander. I loved what he did last year, and he's been a solid, underrated kind of player. Uh, Man, like he is going to be able to help, with that rotation. And not to mention Roman Anthony. I've got him ticketed for top 8 MVP type of voting for this year. Even though Christian Campbell was optioned, Marcelo Mayer, one of the top prospects in baseball, he's made the team. Just came out like today or last night. Um, you've got Willie Abreu, Jaron Duran, um, a ton of other pieces, even some underrated pieces at catcher. Garrett Crochet. I mean, they're solid all around. The only question I'll have is how well does Roldis Chapman hold up at the very back end of the bullpen? That's the only thing I'm not sure of.
Let
And
me
because
ask you.
let me tell you this.
Good.
Back last decade, this is more on the hitter side. Matt Kemp, former longtime
I
Dodger,
remember him.
and
I
Ryan
used to love
Zimmerman, the
watching him.
original Mr.
I
National.
remember them.
Both of
Yep.
those two had a summer where they just had like one rebound year before they kind of just went right down the toilet. That's what I'm thinking will happen with Chapman.
Let me ask you this. Last year, you vehemently said that the AL representative for the World Series would be in the AL Central. Do you have a similar prediction for a division or something similar this year?
No, I don't. Not even though it's 10 years since that 2016 World Series, I don't. But I think I was feeling like I was so close is what I felt like. But the AL this year is just it's very muddied to say the least, especially with Seattle now having another pitcher with health concerns. So I think it's a wide open field for the most part.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a little bit of a funny question. I know you're not much of a gambler, but last year, yours truly bet a lot against the Colorado Rockies. Okay? Name a team I should bet against this year.
Oh, let's see. Well, the Twins would be at the top of my list, but
Okay.
but here's who I would say would probably be your better bet: the LA Angels.
Okay. I
they're the
was
one
thinking
that
that
like
too.
the Angels. Not that they're up to 100 games, but Art Moreno should have sold when he was thinking about it.
Yep.
And speaking of selling out, it's time to tell the people what I actually knew about Clase and Ortiz.
Go
I
ahead.
don't think we've. So, folks, I believe the last time I was on here, on September 12th, I was walking up East 9th. It was after a game. I was uh, just chatting with a couple of guys, and they were not from the States. They spoke fluent English. I just want to paraphrase this. And Brandon, you've seen the video that I recorded. So I'm just retelling this for the audience. We're just chatting baseball. We're in a throng of people. Guardians beat the White Sox that night, and we veer onto the topic of Clase and Ortiz. These two either know them directly and or have teammates back home who know them, and they're pulling up stuff. And when we're talking, we're in this throng of people. We're in this throng of people. And what I find out that night changes how I viewed everything because I thought Ortiz was a for sure goner, and Clase would probably be the guy who comes back. No, it turns out I learned that night that Class A was throwing in the 24 playoffs along with the 24 season. The part I didn't know was 23, but the 24 playoffs, I'm like, I had to ask twice just to be certain, along with, this year, because last year, because the only time I saw him was opening day when he came in a scoreless tie game against the White Sox, funny enough. And then they also were telling me, along with like the one guy had low battery, so it was one thing. The other guy was trying to pull stuff up. Again, they weren't like these were like legitimately kind, like good men, like good dudes. It just is like one in a trillion type of chance, Brand. And what they also tell me really that flips the whole thing is that of the two, they didn't say it was a guarantee, obviously. They made sure to emphasize that, but they told me that Luis Ortiz was the more likely of the two to have a chance. Keyword here was chance to pitch in Major League Baseball again. Now, at the time, I didn't quite understand that. I'm going to stick on the Ortiz vein here for a quick second, but what we have learned in the month since was that at least 2 games, they've got him on that indictment for. One of the ones I was at was on the 27th, I think it was, against the Cardinals.
Was that
One
like
of my
the
buddies caught,
third
shout out to
third
my one
inning
buddy.
pitch?
Yeah, shout out to my one buddy who caught on to it well before I did. I never even thought of it from that game because I don't, he's much taller than I am. I'll just say that without giving his identity away. But I wanted to just make sure he got his quick little shout out. He saw it, I didn't. And once I went back and reviewed, I'm like, oh, holy shit. Like, but that's where it's like, that made sense. Everything lined up. And one of my top local area sources that I've been able to make connections with, I can't name them. I can just tell you, there's someone who I've gotten several scoops from before. I shared this information with them after I had, like, quickly finished my chat because I didn't want anyone else to overhear. Because my thing was, I did not want to break the story. I didn't. I didn't want to take the chance that some new development came about. But these two were so honest. And not only that, everything that they've said is basically proven to be true. Something else I confirmed with my one other source, my most probably reliable source, basically matched up with what I was hearing from these guys and basically was like, yep, seals the deal for me. And that's where I'm so kind of upset with Class A is he had guaranteed money and he was making basically a pittance with this pitch rigging thing. And not to mention, Brandon, even though he had that PED suspension on his ledger from 2020, if he kept pitching the way he was over the course of a career, he was not even just bound for, Guardians Hall of Fame. He was potentially Cooperstown bound. He was on the correct track historically with some of the other few elite closers. That's where I come in as a competitor, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck's wrong with you? That's where I'm pissed off with him. And then Ortiz, look, you know what you were getting into. I don't care what your lawyers are saying. It's like, you knew better. You know better than to do that. Let's not do that. And, well, he's going to pay the price for it. Whether or not he does pitch in MLB again, I can tell you this. Neither of those pitchers, regardless if they ever have eligibility again, neither of them will pitch for the Cleveland Guardians. Those teammates are not going to welcome them back. And I know that beyond a doubt. And one of the players who was key and instrumental last year to keeping that clubhouse together was Nolan Jones. Nolan Jones actually played a
Interesting.
bigger role than people know. And I'm only saying this now because he's been outrighted off the major league roster. He still could reject that assignment, but he'd lose his salary. He got $2 million since he agreed before arbitration, but he wouldn't have the rights to retain any of that salary if he were to reject the outright. But what I was told is that the Guardians organization was pleasantly surprised by his leadership. And this also goes back to like very early July, right at the apex of that 10-game losing streak, where him, Jose, like without Nolan Jones, I get that's why my source was kind of shocked. I spoke with one or two other folks that thought Jones would make the roster, partly because of that, among other things. His leadership last year was probably one of the main reasons the Guardians still made the playoffs. Period. I don't think the Guardians make the playoffs without him on the roster. And I know his contributions weren't exactly the best. I know he didn't have the best spring either, but man, I think people need to at least give Nolan Jones a small apology because without him, without his leadership, after growing up a little bit more out with Colorado and then coming back in, the Guardians aren't in the playoffs. Who knows what happens to this organization? Does the organization fall apart after the whole scandal? I don't know, but I would venture to say things would be a lot different. But I think Guardians fans, as much as we can all acknowledge, and I'll even acknowledge along with you guys, that he was not, that breakout guy he was a couple years ago. Nolan Jones is going to be an indispensable part of this franchise's history because of what he did to help, you know, not necessarily on the field, but definitely within that clubhouse, and probably kept Cleveland on a course of winning baseball for the rest of the decade.
Thank you, Fitz. We're going to wrap up our baseball segment with this. Heading into the negotiations, as soon as the season ends, what is the one sticking point? What is the battle really over?
It's over cap and floor, and honestly, here's the thing: it's not over just that. It's the richest of the rich. It's the guys who've already secured their bag. You've got your Bryce Harpers, Monsotos. I'm more shocked at Brent Rooker being so vehemently against this, given that he was a guy who was not on anybody's radar as far as I can remember just a couple of years ago. He's now become one of the better power bats, loves interacting with fans on social. This would be something where it's a hard thing to go about. And the Dodgers have had some built-in advantages. I don't know if you remember this. Before the current ownership was put in place, McCourt ownership went through bankruptcy. And just to keep a long story short, the Dodgers TV money is shielded. Almost all of it's shielded, or at least a vast majority of it, from the pool that everyone else gets. 330 plus million. They have their whole payroll basically paid for before the start of the year. And that's where you need to start, is the whole revenue model, because with Bally's and some of the other regional sports networks collapse, I want folks to remember this, not even with just Cleveland, but Minnesota is in a far worse situation. That's where David Blitzer is going to come in and really help, come in clutch with how Larry Dolan burdened the franchise with how he bought. Remember, Larry was a lawyer. He wasn't a rich man. Him and Paul, in this day and age, wouldn't be able to own even a minority stake in a Major League Baseball franchise, let alone Cleveland. David Blitzer, when he gets that option exercised for majority control, Paul Dolan is going to do what is the right thing to do, and that'll be to pay off those debts / loans that Larry took out that have burdened the franchise payroll. But also, to get back on track, I mean, you need to have a better distribution model because you lost over 40 million from what you were earning under Bally's with the Guardians last year. And the ESPN deal, from what I've been told, is basically a wash. They aren't gaining that much. They lost into the tens of millions. And the same goes for other teams too. Baseball is in a bad state outside of the couple of regional sports networks that are mainly run by higher payroll, well-paid, not well-paid, well-off clubs.
You're talking like the Yes Network,
Yeah,
MSN, etc.
yeah,
Okay.
all those MSN, like yeah, but like basically that's part of it. You've got, and the big markets aren't going to want to share. I mean, even though New York's kind of gone after the Dodgers, I mean, you have to figure that out first. I think basically how I see it already is the luxury tax is your soft cap. And I think also one of the main concerns from the players' side is the guaranteed contract structure, because unlike every other sport, even though most NBA contracts are guaranteed, not all the way through typically. Major League Baseball, yes. They don't want to lose that. You've got to be able to find a way to ensure that. But I get that they want to say they're suppressing wages. However, here's where I think the union already lost. They used the Cleveland Browns and the Cleveland Guardians as a comp. And that was directly from Bruce Meyer. He lost the union right then and there, earlier this month, late last month, when he said, the Browns can do this and that versus the Guardians. No, you don't know the full situation. Plus, even if you do, you're not telling the folks out loud. What the Browns have in a salary cap league is dysfunctional management. You have functional management in baseball's franchise here in Cleveland, and they've done a fantastic job. They are an outlier. They are an exception to the rule. So what we are seeing from Cleveland, that was not a fair comparison, and that is going to lose the union, the whole battle. Now, Major League Baseball can still, I'm going to just let the curses fly here for a minute. They can still fuck it up. Manfred's built up a lot of goodwill. The league office has built up a lot of goodwill. They cannot screw up anything this year, or they will lose that, and then it becomes another straight up PR battle. The players have already lost it, and I think ownership more than ever, and I think rightly so, especially given the staunch stance, and the players already know that the public's well against it from even probably their own poll. The players have lost this battle, and it's whether or not they want to try and fight it, because I don't think if the ranking union, the guys who are not even in arbitration, the guys who don't earn a lot, the guys who are not the guys who get the long-term deal, if you're one of those guys, basically rookies to, just journeymen, you're going to want to play. It's only going to be those who are in that executive subcommittees and stuff like that. Those are the people who voted against it last year. It was the main rank and file who voted for it. So, and I get why they want to try and, hammer it into everyone's heads, but that's the problem. The rank and file don't earn as much as these top earners do. Juan is a MLB PA rep. That's also got some pressure on him. So right now, I think it's going to come down to how much influence are the rank and file going to be able to put on the executive subcommittees and be able to force their hand into accepting a deal. Not necessarily that would completely be against the player's side, but one that would at least lead to the first step. I don't know how a cap would work, but at least revenue distribution, a floor, and a way to maybe, with the NBA, you're able to go over the cap to re-sign free agents. It's going to be a very complex negotiation. That's why a lot of the folks out there, and even myself, are not as optimistic about a 27th season being played, especially in full. But I think the sooner the players drop this argument, the better it is for them.
Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.